All right, let's jump right in. I want you to think about something for a second. What if the basic building blocks of computer programming could actually be used to build a powerful architecture for our own lives? We're going to explore how these tools can help us find more agency, become stronger self-leaders, and really truly take control of our own stories. So, let's dive in.
It sounds a little out there, right? Can a for loop reclaim a story? Well, that's exactly what we're here to unpack. In this explainer, we're going to see how these core computational concepts, the stuff from Programming 101, can become some of the most powerful tools you have, especially for anyone working with human stories.
So, where do we even begin? Let's start with one of the most fundamental ideas in all of programming, iteration. In plain English, it's just the ability to do something over and over and over again. But we're going to look at it in a completely new light.
And this is where that shift in perspective happens. A computer sees a loop as just a repetitive task, right? It's automation, it's efficient, but it's mindless. But if we look at it from a humanist view, that very same loop becomes a cycle of inquiry. It becomes an iterative ritual. All of a sudden, it's not about mindless repetition anymore. It's about deliberate, deep examination with every single pass.
So how does this actually work in the real world? Well, imagine you have a huge archive of what the source material calls standard scripts. Think of things like clinical case notes or institutional forms, the kind of templates that can really flatten a person's complex story. A programming loop gives you this incredible tool to go through that entire archive, one document at a time, and apply what we're going to call a sovereign transformation, a process that lets you re-examine every single story through a new lens of dignity and wholeness.
Okay, so a loop is a powerful ritual for processing information. We've got that. Now let's build on it. Let's move from that single, repeating action to creating a reusable structure. And we're going to do that by looking at functions.
In coding, a function is just a named block of code that does a specific thing. But let's reframe it, just like we did with loops. For our work, I want you to think of a function as a reusable protocol for self-leadership. It's like you figured out the perfect recipe for handling a really specific, recurring situation. Maybe a tough conversation you have to have a lot. Once you've perfected that recipe, you can just call on it again and again, and you know you're going to get a consistent, successful outcome.
And this ties directly into a core concept in programming, the Don't Repeat Yourself principle, or DRY for short. So, what's the point? Instead of having to reinvent your boundaries or your response every single time you face a challenge, you can just invoke a protocol, that function, that you've already tested and refined. It's about becoming incredibly efficient in your own self-leadership.
So here's what that flow actually looks like. First, you feed the current situation into your function as arguments. Think of these as the raw ingredients. Then, the body of the function, that's the recipe itself, it's where your wisdom and your tested methods get applied. And finally, the function returns a result, a sovereign, intentional action. It's an incredible way to make sure you're responding with purpose instead of just reacting.
All right, now let's expand our architecture a bit. We've been talking about processing text, which is kind of like a one-dimensional line. What happens when we move into the two-dimensional canvas of a digital image? Things get really interesting.
With this, we're reimagining a digital image. It's not just a picture anymore. It's a map. It's a coordinate system for what the source calls a neo-artifact. And I want you to think of every single pixel on this grid as a tiny little container, a container for an idea or an internal state. We can use simple X and Y coordinates to pinpoint a location on this map and then programmatically place a symbol of a reclaimed myth or even a visualization of the self.
And this is where even simple image manipulation becomes this really powerful metaphor. Just think about it for a second. A simple bit of code that goes through every single pixel of an image and makes it just a little bit brighter, well, that's a direct parallel to a protocol that seeks to find clarity and light inside a dark or confusing narrative. Isn't that a beautiful way to think about it?
Okay, so we have these foundational ideas, loops as rituals, functions as protocols. How in the world does this connect to a powerful modern tool like Google AI Studio? Let's build that bridge.
This right here is the key to using AI tools effectively. So many people use standard prompting. You type something in and you just accept the first thing the AI spits out. And that's usually just another standard script. The much more powerful approach is iterative refinement. This is where you treat the whole conversation like a loop. You prompt, you get a draft, and then you inquire, you refine, you prompt again. And with each pass of that loop, you check for intentionality, steering the output until it truly, deeply aligns with the sovereign narrative you're trying to create.
So let's make this super practical. Here is a quick exercise you can try for yourself, and it uses this idea of nested structures, which is really just putting one loop inside of another to create a story within a story.
Here's a really simple prompt you can try in AI Studio. First, you tell it, act as a narrative loom. Then, you design your prompt with 2 loops. The outer loop describes what an outsider, a witness, sees for 3 different life events. Then, the inner loop, the one nested inside, generates the hidden internal thoughts the person had during that same event. I'm telling you, when you run this, you will immediately see how this nested structure creates this incredible depth. It forces you to look at the layers between what is seen and what is actually felt.
To tie this all together, I want you to picture this one powerful metaphor, the function as a transformation chamber. Let's walk through it. Step 1. It all starts at the portal of intent, where the function is defined. Step 2. The seeker, that's our raw data or our standard script, enters the chamber as arguments. 3. The chamber walls, created by the code's indentation, form a sacred boundary. Programmers call it scope. 4. Inside, the ritual takes place. This is the body of the code, iterating, processing, getting to the heart of the matter. And finally, 5. The sovereign emergence, where the transformed whole narrative exits the function. It's a complete, contained process for creating intentional change.
But, you know, at the end of the day, this quote says it all. These aren't just abstract ideas to think about. To really get their power, you have to put them into practice. You have to drive the car. You have to write the code, run the prompts, and actually feel how these structures work when you put them in motion.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to take into your own work. Take a look at the stories, the notes, the templates you use every single day. Which one of those standard scripts could really use a cycle of inquiry, a sovereign transformation, an iterative ritual? I really hope this has given you some new tools to think with. Thanks so much for joining me.